Hey, everybody, it's the Sam and Cole podcast. We're coming to you Friday before the Jaguars will take on the Tennessee Titans Sunday in Nashville for the second time in 18 days. As we have been for the last few months, thanks again to Champion Cycling for their continued support. The three locations, Arlington, the Beach, and Mandarin. Stop by, particularly Christmas time. Really good opportunity to stop in and see what they've got, not just brand new things, but they have everything from beach cruisers to high-end bikes, but they also have any repairs, any accessories, anything you're looking for, and any advice as well. Any of the three locations. So Cole, Al Hearns won't play Sunday. Is that a giant blow against the Jaguars, you think?
You know, I think it's on a scale of 10, I think it's a 7. He has been, I think, the most reliable offensive player this year. Maybe not necessarily always the most dangerous, but He's been the most reliable, and he just kind of keeps getting things done. Kind of reminds me of a basketball player who you look up at the end of the game, and he's got 18 points and 12 rebounds, and you never once remember noticing him, you know? And he just kind of gets it done. And so, yeah, it hurts. It's interesting, though, talking about this week's matchup with the Titans. They've had a short week and then a long turnaround for the Titans. So the preparation has been very different for the two games, and you wonder how that impacts what happens in Nashville on Sunday.
I think that's a very good point, because even Gus Bradley brought it up that, hey, there's, the last time it was such a short week, basically get a lot of basic stuff and go out there and try to concentrate on us. Now, Mike Mularkey and the Titans have had a real chance to look at the Jaguars and prepare for them, and vice versa. The Titans also get a couple of people back that they haven't had available. The Jaguars' loss of Hearns, I agree with you, but if there is ever a situation where that silly next man up thing it should come into play, both Marquise Lee and Rashad Green could get a very big opportunity in this game to play a lot of snaps at that particular receiver position, whichever the Jaguars want to call it. So one of them could really emerge as a guy that the Jaguars could count on. Both of them have great speed. Lee has been, injured all the time, and Rashad Green is just figuring out how to be a pro and was on that revocable IR for 6 weeks. So good opportunity for both of those guys, I think, as well.
And I think they're different kinds of receivers. Lee is a speed guy. Green really more of a quickness guy. I like Green. I like Green in college. I've liked what I've seen of him so far. That type of receiver usually has to learn the next level. And I'll use a comparison of another former Florida State Seminole, Peter Warrick. Warrick had that great quickness, start and stop, lateral. I think Green's probably got better hands, a little more reliable in that standpoint than Warrick. But I don't think Peter Warrick ever really learned to translate those things into the NFL. You can't just always out-athlete the guy in the NFL. In fact, you can do it for a game or for a week or for whatever. You can't just out-athlete the guys in the NFL. So that's what I think what Rashad Green has to do is learn how to translate that stuff and, as you mentioned, become a pro and take that next step. And it's a great chance to do it because he's going to get some chances. I think he's going to get quite a few chances against the Titans with the Hearns injury.
I liked him in college too, but did you think that he was going to be able to have that same kind of speed look in the NFL? I thought that he was just that 4th or 5th guy every time he stepped on a college football field that obviously, there's 4 or 5 guys that you see are going to go play in the NFL. He was one of them. But I just didn't really expect him to come in and have to look like an NFL player so quickly.
The thing in college that caught my eye was how he made catches on passes in traffic. And, Jameis Winston threw a lot of those balls in a small window and between guys. And Green's ability to make those catches, not necessarily with a guy bearing down on him, but to make those catches, in between the numbers instead of outside the numbers, where a lot of speed guys like to operate, inside the numbers, really stood out to me. That was the thing that really caught my eye. I think probably in his in his junior year. I saw that in sophomore or junior year. I saw that and went, you know what, this kid's got something there. And so I don't know that he's the guy who's ever going to be a number one, but if he's your three, you're in really good shape.
And once again, I think this week, much like a little different than last week, actually. Last week we said if you switch quarterbacks, I think the Jaguars win that game going away. They've got better personnel. They play better in other positions. This week, the teams are more evenly matched, and I really do think it'll come down to quarterback play. And let me put it this way as well. If the Jaguars play the way they're capable of playing, they win this game. The problem is that we haven't seen that, particularly out of Blake Bortles in the offense in the red zone, and that's the thing that concerns almost everybody about going on the road and playing a division opponent.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think is holding a lot of people back from, I'm not saying fans, but analysts, media, observers, from really saying, yes, this is a Jaguars team that's really got the arrow pointing up.
Right.
And what's missing is that if they had won 3 of 5 while Bortles was really playing well, that looks like a sustainable 3 out of 5 because your quarterback's playing well. When you're doing it and your quarterback isn't playing well, you're never sure if the quarterback's going to totally get there. Now, I think he will, but it's funny how the play of one guy in the course of a stretch of a month and a half can impact the staying power, the perceived staying power of an upward tick.
And I'm sorry, he has played better than he did last year, and he has shown flashes, and some of his numbers are fantastic. But really, in the last 3 weeks, it's been kind of a plateau that you haven't seen him better recognition, better pre-snap read, better delivery. In fact, I think he's in this mode now where he's seeing things that are happening, but he's not throwing the ball there. He sees it. He sees the guy breaking open, but for some reason he can't bring himself to just go ahead and throw the ball there yet. Then that's the next step that a quarterback has to take.
He's calling now to complain to tell you to stop talking about that.
That's okay.
One of the things that I think back to our conversation at the beginning of the season when we talked about what you wanted to see out of Bortles. I said, I think if he sets the Jaguars record for touchdown passes in a season, I don't care how many interceptions he throws, and that will be a step forward. And he's on pace to do that, regardless of interceptions.
The next touchdown pass he throws will tie him for the all-time record that is still held by David Garrard of all
2007. It's not an impressive record, by the way. When you got 22 guys throwing 30, 40, 50 touchdown passes, you've got 22. But he's going to do that. He's going to break the Jag. And people will say, well, he's got to cut down on the interceptions. I agree. But for him to take that step this year, a reasonable, modest step forward statistically is to do what he's doing this year. It's just that it hasn't been consistently, gradually, a little better, a little hiccup in the road. He actually, I think, played better earlier in the season when the Jaguars weren't winning.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
And that's what's confounding is that he has not played as well, and yet the Jaguars are winning, which, if you're an optimist, says, well, that's a good sign because as soon as he starts playing better, this is going to be a real contender.
That's what you hope. And perhaps the best is the analogy that Shad Khan said, football, like life, is not a straight line going up. There's going to be your ups and downs. And the quarterback position might be the one place where it manifests itself so clearly to everybody that you can tell if a guy is getting better, getting things done, until all of a sudden he's not, because now he's not.
but there are with a quarterback, there are light switches that have to go on. I think of a quarterback more like a circuit breaker. All right, you flip on. Okay, he gets what this pre-snap read means.
Right.
Flip the next breaker. He gets how much time he can hold on to the football safely. Flip the next circuit breaker. He gets that if he's rolling out, it's better to throw it away than to force it and live to fight another, whatever that is, right? Flip the circuit breaker. He learns not to throw the ball when he's past the line of scrimmage, for example. Whatever that is, you flip those
he
things.
said he'd never ever done that.
I know. I'm being a little, snarky, but you've got to flip all those breakers on to turn on all the power in the building, and it feels like you flipped a couple of those on early in the season, and then the circuit broke. Then it overloaded, and it shut down. The lights on the second level and the elevator that goes to the fourth floor, or what? It's just you don't expect them all to flip on at the same time, but you'd like to see once they're on for them to stay on.
This is a new thing for Bortles, because in college you can drop back, look around, and find an open guy and throw it to him. In the pros, you're going to have that occasionally happen. The winning touchdown pass against the Titans 2 weeks ago, Julius Thomas breaks open, he throws in the ball. What's happening now, too, is as he goes back, and I'm sure he's seeing this on tape, I'm sure that Greg Olsen is pointing it out, guys are breaking open over the middle, and he's not yet ready to anticipate and throw that thing out there.
Yeah.
And that's where you see those big plays come from, because the quarterback, the wide receiver know what they're doing together, and the quarterback trusts the wide receiver that he's going to go do that, and he throws it out there. You've seen Tom Brady do that over and over and over, throw the ball well before the receiver even looks like he's going to get into a break.
Yeah, that's what separates a middle-of-the-road quarterback from a top quarterback. I don't think the Jaguars have had somebody who consistently found that guy before he came open, knew he was going to be open before he came open, maybe ever. I mean, Brunell was okay at it, but his plays were usually the deep play, for those big plays. Garrard was never great at it. Leftwich certainly wasn't. We know Gabbert wasn't. I mean, I don't know if the Jaguars have ever had that level of quarterback for any
Steve Matthews, was he? Steve Matthews?
Jay Fiedler?
Jay Fiedler, was he?
Maybe? I'm not sure.
Speaking of snarky.
I always like Jay Fiedler.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a nice guy, actually.
You get an Ivy Leaguer in there. It's always a plus.
That's right.
So we'll see how it all plays out in Nashville. I do want to talk a little college football, because the coaching situations right now, very intriguing.
Outrageous.
First of all, Mark Richt, I understand why it happened. You got to make sure you get a better coach, because he was a really good coach. But I think what Mark Richt, what his legacy will be at Georgia, I think is going to be, he was a really good coach for a long time, and was an even better person while he was there.
Okay, I agree with that. And, a guy who averages 9 wins a game, 9 wins a year, and goes to 10, goes to 15 straight bowl games, and just all kinds of, things that
put all kinds of players in the NFL.
Yeah, things that you look at. But because he didn't beat Alabama, beat Florida, beat Georgia Tech on a regular basis,
he was never the big. I'll use this. He was never the big dog, so to speak,
right,
in the conference that is the toughest conference in which to be the big dog for any length of for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and I mean he's got he's got a legacy of winning there, though, because when you look at it, I mean, he last won the SEC East in 2012, and also won 2 SEC titles, but none since 2005, and that obviously is an issue for Georgia. Sometimes it's better to have a new face. Sometimes you just got to figure it out. He's going to, go to Miami and take his skills there, and it'll be certainly interesting to see how the Mark Richt style of coaching works in a place that's much more frenetic than Athens.
Do you think that had he not attended Miami that he would have taken that job?
No, he would not.
I don't either.
No, absolutely. I mean, he's going there because it's his alma mater, and since he went to school there, he kind of knows his way around some familiar geography and he
recruited well in South Florida, by the way, at Georgia.
Oh, that's true.
But Sony Michel, for example,
right? The tough thing for I'm just telling you, the tough thing for Miami is, Donna Shalale is the president down there, and it's not like she's all fired up to give an unconditional support to the program.
Yeah.
And that's where if you want to return to the days that they were able to recruit from Orlando South and call it the state of Miami, then you better have the budget and the support from the administration to get that done.
Yeah, the LSU job is the second of three I wanted to talk about because that's a crazy situation. That's as mishandled as any major school has handled a coaching situation that I can ever remember.
Right.
The fact that this rumors, it gets out that this is going to be it for Les Miles, and then somehow they're contacting Jimbo Fisher, who says, "Nah, no thanks," and then the governor of Louisiana is calling Baton Rouge to say, "Hey, you better keep that guy." And I mean, just really, this is what we're. And by the way, Les Miles, who has had more recent success than Mark Richt, but also will drive you crazy on game day, going forward on 4th and 17s or whatever else,
stuff like that, right?
They've had pretty darn good success at LSU under Les Miles. I don't know.
That's just a weird thing. But if you talk to anybody who has followed LSU football or anybody who's graduated from LSU, they all say, "Yeah, it's pretty typical." Typical of the politics there, and all of that. So, that's bad. Equally as bad and actually worse, I think, is the handling of the JU situation with Kerwin Bell. And I'd love for somebody from JU to have been willing to give me some background on that when I asked. So I only did get one side of the story. But, this is a classic case of one guy was hired by a previous administration to do one thing, and he was building toward that. And the current guys don't want to do that. So clearly, Tim Cost, the president of JU, who I know you're friendly with, who seems to have always big timed me every time I see him, but that's okay. He is somebody who wants tuition fee paying students playing football on a nice Saturday afternoon on the river, and there's nothing the matter with it.
No, and I had a conversation. Gosh, it's been more than a year ago now with Donnie Horner, who's the athletic director. And, he said in that conversation that he wasn't sure what was going to happen, what direction they were going to go as far as football is concerned. But I think he was thinking of the overall picture of how to handle JU. And if you look at JU and you look from an athletic standpoint, what you want your athletics to do is be your number one marketing program for the university, to be your number one attractor of donors for university. And your best chances to do that with a limited amount of budget is not to do it in football and try to compete in football. Honestly, I mean, it's to try to do it in basketball and baseball. I mean, do what UNF or Florida Gulf Coast did. You look at the teams that have particularly that UNF has been in town, but also Florida Gulf Coast and Mercer having won games in the NCAA tournament. How big that was for those schools. That's what JU should be a basketball school, in my opinion.
Well, and they're never going to compete at a higher level than they compete now, as long as they lack the commitment to building some sort of new facility, because you cannot recruit when Swisher is your practice facility and where you play your games. It's just, it's a nice gym. It's a great place to go play for me and you, but you're always going to get that secondary student athlete, because you're not competing literally with anybody. Heck, you're not even competing with UNF for when it comes to facilities.
Yeah, you can sell you can sell the city, you can sell the beach, you can sell the warm weather and all that stuff when you're recruiting somebody. But that was one thing that when they decided to start playing, go back, when I got to town, and I've been involved with JU at some level since 1996 when I started doing public address announcing for the basketball games. That was back at the old Coliseum. And routinely there would be several dozen of Micah Ross's friends and relatives, and that was about it in the stands in those games back in those days.
Exactly.
Then they went back to play on campus, and it got a little bit better. You could get some students, but there's not, there's a lot of students who go to JU who live in the area but not right on campus, so it's hard to necessarily get everybody bought into that. So then they started playing at the arena when the arena was built, and there were actually a few games that had a really good atmosphere in the arena.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
And not just a Florida State game, but some conference games that really had good atmosphere. But it's expensive, and I right now I think JU is tapping the brakes as far trying to say, all right, let's figure out what we want to do and what we want to be and how we need to get there as far as all of their sports are concerned. And it's probably a smart thing to do, but it is frustrating if you want to see, if you want to see things progressing and going forward.
And no matter what they do, the program is never going to be as good as it is right now in terms of the quality of athlete that's coming there to pay their own way to play and to win football games, to be respected, to be a favorite in a lot of these games. You're talking
basketball or football now?
Football.
Yeah,
football.
Yeah. And I don't think
it's never going to be as big as it was and as is right now.
Clearly, when Alan Verlander was the athletic director, he had a goal to build that thing up at JU to the point where they were looking at Big South or one of those type of conferences.
That's right.
They're not going in that direction. That's not what they're going to do now. So now, this all being said, and I know Kerwin, I'm certain, is disappointed with how it's been handled. I haven't talked to him, but I'm sure he's disappointed. He's going to get a job. He's too good an offensive coach.
Oh, I don't think there's any question he'll get a job. But there was no reason that they couldn't have said to him last summer, "Hey, looks like we're coming to a settlement here of what we're going to do with football. Let's talk about this because we know that you were brought in to build this thing to a scholarship program. We're probably not going to do that. So if you need to go do that, then we understand. And we'll coach this year, and then we'll have an amicable parting of the ways." Instead, they brought him in there yesterday at a 1:00 meeting, and he thought it was to talk about his salary and how they were going to stay in the PFL. And what happened? He walked in. They said, "Hey, we're not going to do scholarship football. We're not interested in that. And so thank you for your service. Bye."
Yeah, I think there's probably been a lack of understanding on both sides of what the other side really wants and thinks. And
I'll buy that.
And it's easy to paint one side as the bad guy in this.
It's easy to do right now because nobody from JU was willing to talk to anybody. That's why it's easy to do.
Yeah.
And so this is where they make a mistake. And I don't know if it's Donnie Horner's military background or this is how Tim Cost wants to run things, but there is no reason why they couldn't have quietly called or talked with some media people, long-term media people. Let me think. Me, you, there's a couple of other people that you've got to, and for people who are listening, this is where the information comes from a lot. And if you're in one of those positions, you've got to develop trust in some media so that when this situation comes up, I don't need every piece of information because they say that they're going to talk about it next Tuesday, but you've got to be able to trust somebody and call them and say, all right, look, none of this is for attribution. I'm just giving you a background on kind of what happened. Because right now I've got background on what happened from the other side of the table.
Right.
And all I wanted and all anybody wants is to be able to present the situation fairly. And I would have said, all right, here's what I was told, blah, blah, blah. Yes, no. Well, actually, that's what happened. Oh, okay. Yeah. No problem.
And it's funny, too, because the times, by and large, that JU football has created any kind of heat in terms of coverage, it's been for things that don't usually get coverage in football. It's not about a game or a winning streak or a match. It's been, what are they doing? What's the trajectory? Where are they going next? What's going to happen? And you know, again, if I'm the athletic director in the big picture, I think it makes a whole lot more sense to put your resources toward the sports you can compete on a national level. I don't think you can compete on a national level and get any kind of attention for football at JU. And so I think that makes sense. Now we talk about the handling.
Maybe that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they're doing. I don't have any problem with the end result here, Cole. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. You know, I have a problem with how it was handled because JU walks a very kind of tenuous line to be relevant in sports. And when it seems like every time they do something like this, it has some sort of messy side note to it. That doesn't make any sense. You know, they should be they have the name Jacksonville in their name. They should be celebrated as the university in town, and yet they don't embrace that. I've never quite understood all of the thought process as to how and why they do the things that they do.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time over there, as I mentioned. I'm friendly with Tim Cost. I'm friendly with Donnie Horner. I spent 5 years as a play-by-play guy doing those games. I've actually had a longer relationship from a paid relationship with JU than anybody else in town, any other team, outlet, anything else. One of their big challenges is, academically speaking, and from a tuition standpoint and so forth, they are competing with different schools than they are competing with athletically, with the exception maybe of like a Stetson or a Davidson, right? The other schools that they're competing against, by and large, are not competing at the same level from an academic standpoint and from a tuition standpoint. So it's hard for them to get a lot of people from Jacksonville to go. Traditionally, they have had a lot of Northeasterners who have come down to go to JU, or a lot of Upper Midwesterners who like the weather and like the school and like the specific areas that they have academically. And I think that's hurt them in some regard because it's been hard to keep those people around and keep me. I'll give you an example. A guy who was very engaged at JU, a guy by the name of Matthew Camphy, was on the board there, was a basketball player and a football player at JU. But he now lives in the Northwest, and so you have some of their guys who could be real strong advocates, and they don't always. When you have a small school like that, when it's a small enrollment, and you have that whatever percentage is that goes and it does not stay in Jacksonville, it's tough to have that same engagement.
I mean, I had two All-State volleyball.
Nope, we lost you. We lost you there, Sam. So, tell you what, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there and call it a podcast. We thank you for listening. And thanks, as always, to our friends at Champion Cycling for their support. 3 locations, Arlington, The Beach, and Mandarin. If you have a cyclist or a cyclist wannabe. Oh, okay. Sam, we lost you there for a bit. Sam, are you back?
Yeah.
All right. We lost you. You're about to say you had 2.
Oh, both of my daughters are All-State volleyball players. Mm-hmm. And, you look at JU's volleyball team, there might be one Jacksonville girl on there, Yeah, the same thing at UNF basically, but I don't quite understand a lot of the thought process on how they're going to sustain and build their programs there, and maybe that's the problem. I'm thinking that they want to sustain and build them when they just want them to be what they are.
Well, I think that's probably the case with football. But I think you got to you when you have limited resources, you have to put them. You can't put them everywhere, right? I think what we're seeing now is a shift in focus of resources athletically for JU. I think that's what's at the crux of this whole situation with Kerwin.
Could they have a more beautiful baseball facility?
Oh, fantastic.
Probably not, right?
And by the way, one of their alums had a pretty good little run here in the month of October, Daniel Murphy, right? So
that is exactly true. Absolutely. But, and Tim, as the baseball coach, I hope that he's getting the support that he needs because, that's another thing that that's one of those things that you can come out of anywhere and get to the College World Series and bring a lot of positive publicity to your school.
And with all the good baseball players in the state of Florida and a chance to play a long season and play a lot in the warm weather, to me, baseball, basketball, track, those are the kind of lacrosse they're putting a lot into. Those are the kind of programs that I think JU can compete on a national level. And so I suspect that's where you're going to see a lot of the resources go. All right, that'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast. Our thanks to Champion Cycling, 3 locations, Arlington, the Beach, and Mandarin. Great to this time of year if you are a cyclist or have a cyclist on your Christmas buying list or a cyclist wannabe who wants to get into it. Check with those guys, either of the 3 locations. Follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Kavaris. Follow me on Twitter at Cole Pepper. And follow this. You can subscribe on iTunes or on Stitcher to this podcast, and we'll keep you going. We'll have one after the Jaguars and Titans tangle on Sunday as well. Sam, have a great weekend.
Thank you, Cole. We'll talk to you right after the Titans game Sunday.
That'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast. Have a great weekend.